that piece, and it's Musica Antiqua of Cologne with Reinhard Goebel conducting. I'm Alan McClellan. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. We've got fantastic music for you through the night, so I hope you'll stay listening. I'm here all the way to midnight, and there's more after that.
To go on air. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting. Would everyone please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to remind everyone that in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Is there any public comment from the board?
Yes. So I mentioned 2 weeks ago that, partially in recognition of Black History Month, that I will take public comments to highlight a couple of people who've made significant contributions to our country. So that today I want to talk about Douglass. This should be pretty brief. I think it'll take less than 3 minutes. So Frederick Douglass was born into slavery around 1818 in Maryland. His mother was of Native American ancestry, and his father was of African and European descent. Like many slaves, he was separated from his mother as an infant, and by the age of 6, worked in the Rye House plantation in Maryland. From there, Douglass was given to the Auld family in Baltimore, where Sophia Auld taught him the alphabet. With that basic foundation, he taught himself to read and write, and later used the Bible to teach other slaves to read. Once word spread of his effort to educate fellow slaves, he was transferred to Edward Covey, a farmer known for his brutal treatment of slaves. Roughly 16 at the time, Douglass was regularly whipped. After several failed attempts to escape, Douglass finally left Covey's farm in 1838. Once settled in New York, he married a free black woman from Baltimore, and the young couple moved to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where they met Nathan and Mary Johnson, a married couple who were born free persons of color. It was the Johnsons who inspired the couple to take the surname Douglass, after the character in the Sir Walter Scott poem, The Lady of the Lake. By 1843, Douglass had become part of the American Anti-Slavery Society's 100 Conventions Project, a 6-month tour through the United States. Douglass was physically assaulted several times during the tour by those opposed to the abolitionist movement. On one particularly brutal attack in Pendleton, Indiana, his hand was broken, which never fully healed over the course of his life. When he returned, Douglass published the first and most famous of his autobiographies, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which my parents made me read when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. Shortly after publication, Douglass traveled to Ireland and Great Britain, where he was impressed by the relative freedom he had as a man of color compared to what he had experienced in the United States. When he returned to the United States in 1847, Douglass began publishing his own abolitionist newsletter, The North Star, which later included coverage of women's rights issues. The newsletter's name was changed to Frederick Douglass's paper in 1851 and was published until 1860, just before the start of the Civil War. In 1852, he was invited to speak in New York for the 4th of July, where another of his more famous speeches, where he gave one of his more famous speeches, which was later called, what we now call, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. In one section of the speech, Douglass noted, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgiving, with all your religious prelate and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages." Although he supported President Abraham Lincoln in the early years of the Civil War, Douglas fell into a disagreement with him after the Emancipation Proclamation, which effectively ended the practice of slavery, as Douglas was disappointed that Lincoln didn't use a proclamation to grant ex-slaves the right to vote. In 1868's presidential election, he supported the candidacy of former Union General Ulysses S. Grant, who promised to take a hard line against white supremacist-led insurgencies in the post-war South, and Grant notably oversaw passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1871, which was designed to suppress the growing Ku Klux Klan movement. Douglas later died after suffering a heart attack on his way home from a meeting of the National Council of Women, a women's rights group still in its infancy at the time, and his work still serves as an inspiration to those who seek equality and a more just society. So certainly the works of people such as Frederick Douglass help pave the way for others to come after and be treated with fairness and equality.
Well, thank you. That looks very educational. Any other public comments? I would like to thank Anita Shipers. She's a local resident who was at an auction that benefited a domestic violence shelter, I believe, and she entered a competition for an auction item for a photography class. She was the highest bidder, and I heard the bidding went pretty high, and when she won the photography class, she gave it to the Lunenburg Public Library, and now 20 of us are taking a free photography class once a week from 6:30 to 8:30, and it's fascinating, and it's all due to the generosity of Anita Shipers. So thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fun. Are there any public comments from the public? Okay, any announcements?
Yes, some from the town clerk's office. These have been posted on Facebook. The 2020 census forms were mailed on the 10th of January and should have been returned to the town clerk's office by now. If you have not done so, please have them in as soon as possible. If you lived in town on January 1st and did not receive a form, please contact the town clerk's office. Dog licenses for 2020 are due April 1st and will be available at the town clerk's office after February 15th. The Citizens Party Caucus will be held Monday, March 16th at 7 p.m. at the Turkey Hill Elementary School cafeteria. Anyone interested in running for town office should attend. The last day to register to vote or change party for the March 3rd presidential and state primary rep primaries is February 12th at 8 p.m. And the town clerk's office will be open until 8 p.m. that day. We will have early voting for the March 3rd primaries beginning February 24th through February 27th, 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Monday and Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday at Town Hall. Absentee voting for the presidential primary is available now, but they do not have the ballots for the state rep primary yet. The special state representative election will be March 31st, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the TC Passios building. And if you're interested in becoming a poll worker, please contact the town clerk's office. They're looking for people. Two other announcements, both from Unitil. Unitil, the government liaison, passed along information related to increased costs in electricity over the winter months, noting that many people have noted that their month-to-month change in bills. So they're saying the reasons for this change are twofold. Firstly, usage is generally up for all customers during the peak winter months as furnaces work harder to maintain internal temperatures. Secondly, supply rates, also known as non-Unitil portion of the bill, are seasonal in nature, with higher rates in the winter months and lower rates in the summer. The seasonality of rates has increased over the last decade due to the constraints on the natural gas pipeline capacity in this region. They have created a landing page for information on their website. So I'll put this, it's a long email link, so I'll put that up on the website and the town Facebook page. And that's just more information for people to go to and look at. Secondly, regarding their recent rate filings with the Mass Department of Public Utilities, Unitil has reached a settlement agreement with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office regarding both its natural gas and electric distribution rate filings. This agreement would significantly lower the overall rate impacts to customers compared to the previous rate filing, while also changing the timetable for implementation. On the electric side, the new rates would take effect on November 1st. On the gas side, new rates would be phased in beginning March 1st through March 1st, 2020 through March 1st, 2021. And to give you a snapshot of what the rates look like, the residential electric rate, the original filing was an increase of $4.18 a month, cost per month. The settlement cost per month is $2.73.
What's that based on?
This, so it's what they settled with the Attorney General.
But I mean, $4.18 and $2.73 for what? I mean, it's a funny, it's not like kilowatts per hour.
I'm assuming it's operational costs. They're looking for an increase to raise prices based on operational costs. But,
Is this information somewhere?
it was just received at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's nowhere yet.
Okay.
But it will be.
Great.
And.
Website?
It can be,
Great.
yes. And the February 26th public hearing regarding these rate filings is still being scheduled, being held as scheduled. So that is still on track, but that's an update on their rate filings.
I know the price per kilowatt hour in my household went up significantly last year. So no wonder people are complaining.
That's all I have.
All right, so then I guess we're ready for our 7:05 appointment, a joint meeting with the sewer commissioners to mutually appoint to the sewer commission vacancy until the next annual election. John Reynolds.
Madam Chair, Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I'd like to call the Sewer Commission meeting to order on February 4th, 2020.
Please do.
And in attendance, we have Dave McDonald, a member, Mike Malt, a member, and myself.
Thank you. Is anyone going to speak?
Don't do this much. I'd just like to introduce John. John, we are very happy to have John here tonight. He's a member from a few years back. He was with the team for a while and was very valuable. And the one thing that, among his many contributions, was his advocacy for the users at that time. And now again, even at this time, with hopefully soon the four of us, John will be the only member who actually is on sewer. And that's very valuable to have somebody who's actually a user. I will make one plug while I'm up here that this will bring our 5-member board to 4 members, so we still have one opening on the board, and I would encourage everyone out there, particularly people who are in the sewer service area on sewer, to come get involved. It's a particularly good time to get involved, whether a member or not. We're going through the budget, and after 5 years of holding the line with no rate increases, it looks like this year we're not going to be able to. So we'd encourage people to get involved and think about becoming a member of the commission. And I would introduce you to John, who you all know very well.
Would we like to hear from John?
Of course. Sure.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you, John. Thank you.
I really don't have anything prepared to say other than I was on the board for around 5 years, so I think I can step in with some current knowledge at a time when I don't think the commission can afford to cancel any meetings for lack of quorum. So I'm willing to step in if when you are willing to appoint me.
Oh, I know that the Sewer Commission is very happy to have you back on board. It's great that you don't need any training time or anything. You're ready to go when you step in. So thank you for volunteering. The town not only needs volunteers, but it needs qualified volunteers who are willing to do the work. So thank you so much. We know that you're one of those. Any questions for John?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for stepping up to volunteer. And my only question is, are there any other boards or committees in town that you're currently a member of?
No.
Okay.
No, just thank you for volunteering.
Okay, well, while I have the mic, I'd like to continue Carl's plug. I mean, we have 860 ratepayers. Some of those are businesses, so, I don't know, 800 individual ratepayers. I just would encourage one of those 800 to please step up. You know, you'll have some control over your own sewer bill. So I just hope that someone else is willing to step up.
And you guys meet twice a month? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so the 2 meetings a month, and that's pretty much, and plus a little bit of homework, of course.
Right.
And a willingness to learn and contribute, for sure. No, I agree that, the town needs volunteers who are dedicated and willing to step up. We're a small town. We cannot afford to pay for all of the people that you would need to pay to get this job done. So thank you very much for coming forward. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we appoint John Reynolds to the Sewer Commission until the next annual election.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
I think we need to get them to vote too.
Oh, you guys need to vote too. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous.
Are there any other nominations?
No, not me. I have to close the meeting. If I have a motion to adjourn? Second motion. And this we'd be adjourning to reconvene at the DPW to work on the budget, among other things. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Well, have a good meeting.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you very much for coming.
And next time, hey, 2 more weeks.
Too bad we're all new.
Bye-bye. Thanks for coming. I think there's no regular member, right? Because didn't we?
Oh, 3 associate, yep, that's
So
correct.
Just
Yep.
2 associates, right?
No, 3. That regular was filled,
And so they normally have,
because that
Well, they usually have
was
3.
filled with the associate.
and they usually have 3 associates. Okay.
I'll just- Let me go.
Yes, we're
Okay,
good.
all right.
Perfect.
So there are no interviews, appointments, reappointments, or resignations. Go right into the town manager report.
Yes.
And so this is our plug for people putting in talent bank forms for vacancies on town boards. There is 1 regular member and 3 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 vacancy in the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on the Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Open Space Committee, 1 vacancy on the Planning Board, 1 vacancy on the Sewer Commission, and multiple vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals for associate vacancies. An update on the meeting that was held with Mass DOT regarding Route 2A and Route 13 intersection. The police chief, the DPW director, and I met with Mass DOT on January 29th on site and reviewed the issues with the intersection and the right lane northbound into Walmart. It appeared that a relatively easy solution of making the lights on Electric Ave and on the Walmart side of the intersection priority protected green arrows would address the issue. Mass DOT is going to do a traffic volume count within the next week, and we'll be reviewing the crash data. And we were told we would hear back from them within the next month.
So everybody should drive down there this week, right? Get the traffic count up.
I mean, is there a certain number that they're looking for? I mean, does it really matter?
Their new number was discussed but they're just looking for high counts. And so I think they'll be doing it over a weekend period, so that's the largest amount of traffic volume.
Right.
So,
That'd be great if it's an easy fix.
yes.
4th of July, 4th, I'm not 4th, I'm saying 4th of July. Valentine's Day weekend when everyone's out and about.
Yes.
Great.
Complete Streets Award Ceremony. I attended the award ceremony for the communities that received the Complete Streets Construction Funding Grant on January 28th in Fitchburg. The Lieutenant Governor, Senator Tran, and Transportation Secretary Pollock all spoke about the creation of this grant program and have awarded 148 construction grants totaling $46 million since creating the funding program in February of 2016. For this round, Mass DOT awarded $8.1 million to 24 communities. It was a nice event and highlighted the impact of these programs that they have on the cities and towns.
Now, did a lot of the communities show up?
About half did, but they announced every single award. But some were from, they were across the state.
Right,
so.
right. So Lieutenant Governor Polito, she is everywhere, isn't she?
She is. She's amazing. And she gets it, because having been a selectman. So. The Old Primary School Hazardous Materials Survey was performed on January 30th, and we should have a report by next week. 17 and 23 West Street RFP. The deadline to respond to the request for proposals for the disposition of 17 and 23 West Street was yesterday, and there were no bids received. The Assistant Town Manager and I are reviewing rebidding this, and hopefully we'll have more interest in a second attempt.
What is your expectation on this?
The assessed value is, I think, higher than we would receive, but I would hope we'd get some bids next time, and we can make a determination at that point.
Was there a minimum?
No. No, it stated what the assessed value was within the bid package, but there's no minimum.
And where does the bid package go out to?
It doesn't, you have to request it, so we put it out where it's advertised. So this is all according to procurement law. So it's advertised in the Central Register, in the paper. It was put on Facebook. So you are allowed to disseminate it to people, so it was sent to local realtors, but there was no interest at this time.
Well, thanks for trying.
I'll skip the upcoming meetings till the end. An update on unless you want me to wait to do this until we get to the agenda item on this topic, the fiscal 21 budget?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay. Wait?
Yeah.
Okay. Upcoming meetings, events, and other announcements. The TCP Building Design Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, February 5th at 6 p.m. in the Ritter Memorial Building to rate the 3 firms that were interviewed on January 29th. The Green Communities Task Force will be meeting on Thursday, February 6th at 6:30 p.m. in the Ritter Memorial Building to discuss conversion and/or purchase of the streetlights to LED, and I'll be attending both of those meetings. And the public meeting to hear feedback on the ADA Public Rights-of-Way transition plan put together by Stantec and administered by Montechusett Regional Planning Commission will be on Tuesday, February 11th at 7 p.m. And I will present a preliminary budget for fiscal 21 on February 11th to the Selectmen and to the Finance Committee on February 13th at 6:30 p.m.
Now, I have a question. When will the public discussion take place? When will there be time for the public to ask questions on that?
Well, every meeting, there's time for
So when you
Public
present
meeting.
when you present it, well, like the forecast, you had a separate meeting for discussion of that. So this one, when you present it next week, there will be an opportunity for discussion at the BOS meeting and at the Finance Committee meeting?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I can't promise that I can answer all questions at night, but I'll take them down and answer them when I get them. And that's all I have related.
What happened to the department head meeting?
Oh, it's at the
Where is
very end.
that?
Department head meeting. Some updates from our monthly meeting that was held last Tuesday. PAC is working with Comcast and adding the third channel that will be an educational channel. The library is receiving a grant from Hannaford's for new shelving at the library. And the Library Board of Trustees will be submitting an article relative to the ability to direct the investments of the library trust funds for the annual town meeting. The town clerk, I've relayed all the information from the town clerk as far as the special state election and special state primary and presidential election and early voting, so they're very busy this time of year. And land use, the land use director reported that the planning board will have articles for the annual town meeting for an amended earth removal bylaw and amended stormwater bylaw. And the planning board is also moving forward in hiring a firm to do updated population projections.
So I have a couple questions there. When will the stormwater task force receive the amended stormwater bylaw?
I'm not sure, I can ask the land use director, I think
Right.
they're working on it. And they're working with our consultant, CEI, to do that update. So
Yeah, but often we get information at the very last second, so I'd like to get that as soon as it's available. And is there a reason that we're hiring a firm to do an updated population projection?
That was part of the capital plan for the master plan, so it's a component of the master plan.
Okay.
And we don't have good population projections.
Right. It seems they're all over the place, so I don't know if there is a good population projection, but if it's part of the master plan project, then it is.
Can we also ask, I know the planning board's been working on earth removal bylaw, but that responsibility currently sits with this board, so I'm just curious if we can just get that sooner or draft.
Because there was certainly a lot of hoopla over it at the last town meeting. It'd be nice if there was less this time, if there was more time for more eyes to see it, to look for issues that may arise. Maybe it won't be so painful at town meeting.
Well, I think we know what the issues were. So with the townspeople made it pretty obvious what their concerns were. So I think we could, hopefully they're addressing those concerns, but starting the conversation, making sure those concerns are addressed.
Right. Make sure that they will listen to, the town people will listen to.
Right.
I agree. All right, any other questions on the town manager
Nope.
report? So we're going to wait for the fiscal '21 budget discussion?
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And it's the next item, so why don't you go
Right
into
into
that?
it.
Yes.
Okay, so I will be presenting the preliminary fiscal '21 budget next Tuesday to the Selectmen and next Thursday to the Finance Committee. In advance of that, I wanted to share some of the latest updates to the fiscal '21 budget that will affect the overall bottom line. Our insurance carrier, Maya, released the rate range for Maya members, and the range was a minimum of minus 1.5%, with an average of 3.7% and a maximum of 8.3%. That's what all the member communities are going to see. I spoke with our account representative, and she confirmed that we could reduce our estimate to the 3.7% safely.
Oh, great.
So that has been done. It was relayed that our loss ratios look good and our actual renewal will be no more than that percentage and maybe less. We should have that figure within the next couple of weeks, our actual renewal rate. As I reported at the presentations on the 5-year forecast, the estimate for new growth that was used for the target budgets to develop the fiscal '21 budget was $350,000. As you recall, this is a reduction from our estimate of $375,000 used for the fiscal '20 budget, and seeing a trend was reduced to $350,000. Our regional assessing firm, RRG, has provided their estimate of what they project will be captured for new growth that would affect the fiscal '21 budget, and their estimate came in substantially lower at $214,000. We had a meeting today to review the validity of this estimate, and based on that review that they have performed using existing building permits and known projects at this time that would result in capturing new growth, I will be reducing the estimate used for the target budget. We will continue to review this, but erring on the side of caution, we'll adjust that estimate now. So in regards to other updates, at this point in time, the only new positions on the town side are an additional full-time police officer, an additional career firefighter, and I am exploring a regional education and enforcement coordinator position that would be fully funded by grant money. This position requires an update to the town's private hauler regulations, which would be done through the Board of Health, and I'll be attending the Board of Health's meeting in March to review what would need to be amended in their regulations, and a webinar that is being held with the 2 other communities on this grant position that's through Mass DEP. So the position would focus on enforcing the recycling requirements by the private haulers. The preliminary budget proposal eliminates the assistant town mechanic position as well, because after assessing the current structure, the mechanic that was hired in fiscal 2019 has worked out well, and we do not see a need to keep this position. These funds will be reallocated to address other needs, such as ADA compliance and town facilities.
So I guess I have some questions on the education and enforcement coordinator. You know, I hadn't this wasn't in the town manager report. We saw it 4:45, so I'm just looking at it. The town's private hauler regulations, you're talking about Casella?
No, so it's not related to curbside. These are private, so all the private haulers that have to be licensed through the Board of Health, these are those regulations to enforce their recycling.
How did we handle this? How have we handled this to this date?
There is no enforcement about recycling within that. The language in the current regulations, how I understand it, needs to be more strict in order to qualify for this grant, and meaning that they need to offer a bundled recycling and trash component within their
So
service
if
delivery.
private haulers don't choose to do that, will they be unable to haul in Lunenburg?
They would
guess-
have to abide by the Board of Health regulations.
So they could leave Lunenburg if they didn't want to abide by the new regulations?
They wouldn't be allowed to haul within Lunenburg if they didn't abide by those
And
regulations.
do other towns have these regulations in force?
Yes.
All of the other towns? I mean, I guess I don't know, how is it that we missed the boat if everybody else is doing it already?
I don't know if everybody else is doing this, but other towns are. But it is a requirement to receive this grant funding.
So my understanding of what you're saying is that, you know, every company, for the most part now, is doing recycling and trash. So they're all doing it. But you're just saying that our regulations are just a little outdated here, and there's need to be updated to say that that's what we expect them to do?
According to our Mass DEP regional coordinator, yes, they would need to be updated.
Why can't the Board of Health take care of that? They have a full-time employee?
Currently, it's not covered under her position.
But she is the Board of Health.
This would be outside of that,
Why?
because it's outside of that role.
So why is it done through the Board of Health? Well, you know, I mean,
Like
that's
private hauler
confusing to me.
regulations, that's their jurisdiction.
Private hauler regulations are the jurisdiction of the Board of Health.
Correct.
So why doesn't the Board of Health take care of this?
That's why I'm going to the Board of Health, to see if we can get this accomplished.
Right, so but why, I guess I don't understand why the current personnel can't take care of it.
I guess you can ask the Board of Health that, but.
I mean, why couldn't you ask the Board of Health that?
I can, but I know that's currently, that she doesn't perform that role. It's
Yeah, I know, it's
outside of
probably
her-
because we don't have that role. I mean, you know, I really
This would-
believe that we have to get more done with less. And, you know, if you, now, how many towns are we thinking about?
2 other towns.
2 other towns.
Phyllis, I think
Is it
you may
is it a-
misunderstand what Heather's saying.
Is it a full-time position?
It's part-time.
It's part-time. And what happens when the grant runs out? Does the position go
Then that
away?
position would have to be eliminated if there's no funding for it.
I think I understand what you're saying, Heather. Maybe it's a little different than the way that Selectman Luck's understanding it. But you, based on the conversation you had with the regional DEP coordinator, this is a grant that's available. You want to apply to it, but we're currently ineligible to apply for it because our regulations are a little outdated. So you need to have this discussion with the Board of Health.
Yes.
And that's, as I read this, that's what you're saying, which would be done through the Board of Health, so that's your next step. And so you're just kind of informing us that you're doing
Yes.
this. Got it.
And, I think everything you propose is perfectly fine, the right way to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like an outdated policy to not require that. I mean, why wouldn't you require them to recycle?
Right.
So there's no harm to me in adding that. And as far as, the position, I wouldn't fathom that we could just throw that on the Board of Health Department to take that role on.
No. I can tell you they're looking to increase the hours of the office staff because her hours are only 3 days a week instead of 4.
Okay.
Because the workload
Right.
doesn't, and that's outside of even doing something like this.
Yep.
Got it.
Well, I guess if the understanding is the position goes away when the grant goes away, I guess I don't see any harm, but I would like it understood that if the grant goes away, the position goes away. And do they get benefits and all? No, they don't because
No,
it's...
part-time.
Right.
Yep. And just regarding the other half of that agenda topic, for our town meeting warrant articles, the meeting with the Green Communities Task Force, part of that agenda is to vote on an article for town meeting for either paying Unitil to convert those streetlights to LED or outright purchase of the streetlights. So that will be their discussion Thursday night. And the police chief and I have talked, and we left it with the board that we'd come back to the board about 635 Mass Ave. So be reapproaching the board about that.
So just, I think we should remind everybody weekly that, when does the town meeting warrant close?
March 16th at 4 p.m.
Okay, so,
And when is town meeting?
May 2nd.
May 2nd. We probably should start announcing that.
yeah, just,
Let's see. Oh, I had a question on that, the PAC. If PAC is working with Comcast to add a third channel, what does that include what does that require of PAC? I see more and more people who are abandoning Comcast and going with cheaper plans, like something that YouTube offers, and I expect that the number of people subscribing to Comcast will be going down and not up in Lunenburg, and I know that PAC is totally funded by Comcast subscribers. So I guess I'd like to know what their plan is if their funds start decreasing as people leave Comcast.
That will be part of their budget presentation, I'm sure.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I can tell you the educational channel, that was part of the 10-year agreement with Comcast. They agreed to that, to add that third channel, and it adds additional local programming. So,
Comcast may be taking a hit on subscribership, but they're not going away.
No, they're not going away, but, the PAC is completely funded by our bills, so the more subscribers to Comcast, the more money PAC has. The less subscribers to Comcast, the less money there is. There's no other source of revenue besides the taxpayers of Lunenburg for PAC.
Cable users anyways.
Yes, right. Comcast users.
Are there other options for, I mean, I'm under the impression that Comcast is the only option.
No, I was at Best Buy, and they were telling me that you can get something through YouTube.
No, I'm talking about, let me rephrase what I'm asking. Is there, I mean, we all need the internet, but is anyone providing it in town besides Comcast? Is Verizon? I mean, I thought
Well,
we
this is
were
cable.
out of- Yeah. But,
I think there are more options opening up.
oh, I
haven't-
definitely
We're
agree.
talking about streaming services, not cable services.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. People, the current trend is people are dropping cable, and they're going to internet only, and then they're kind of paying all these piecemeals for the services that they're getting. So I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with you. I just don't think that we have a lot of options here in town, so I'm sure Comcast is not probably losing money, they're probably just not gaining as much money.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about Comcast. I'm just saying that, for each subscriber, every subscriber we lose is a little bit less for PAC.
Is the contract based on subscribers or based on their money? How much?
No, totally. The PAC contract is totally negotiated. Piece of my bill goes to PAC.
Correct, but is it?
And
They
that's
set
it.
the rate, they don't, it's not per person.
Well-
If they'll just reassess it and put it back on the people who are still subscribing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like.
Their budget's not going to go down, is my understanding.
Yeah. The Comcast isn't going to lose money. We're
And
still gonna pay
Comcast
for
isn't,
it.
no, but I would expect PAC would.
I guess what I'm saying is even if people lose, I'm not trying to get into too detailed into this, but I'm trying to understand this briefly. Is their payment linked to the quantity of subscribers, or is it linked to the amount of the bills?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that.
Because if it's linked to the amount of the bills, we all know Comcast keeps going up.
So those fees keep going up.
Oh, yeah, right. But I thought it was a piece of the subscriber's bill, and that was set. I didn't
Yes,
know
it's
that.
one of the fees in the line items we bill.
Right.
Right.
The situation describing affects every public access channel everywhere, not just ours.
Yeah.
So it's an industry-wide phenomenon they all are addressing and know about.
So, okay. Well, that's really good. 10 more years of educational options, so people in their basements that are making videos have a chance to talk about, the kangaroos and koala bears. That's good.
Now, the discussion of the fiscal year budget also includes the five-year forecast. Are we ready to move into that? Does anybody have any questions or comments on the five-year forecast?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Anybody want to open it up, or shall I?
I don't have any specific questions. I'm happy to start wherever you want to.
Okay. When I looked over the five-year forecast, I noticed that it is a financial planning and policy-making tool that projects revenues and expenditures conservatively over a multi-year period, and that we need to determine whether fiscal problems are on the horizon and plan for change. Are there fiscal plans on the horizon, and if so, what's the plan?
Fiscal problems, not plans?
Problems, yes.
I would say, given what we were provided for a long-term plan for the school, we need to re-examine how we can address their needs in a different way. Whether extension of the plan, so that will be a discussion that I will have to have with the superintendent.
And, I know that this five-year plan also reinforces the need for long-range considerations during the annual budget process, and I'm really looking forward to that. When we get into debt, the auditors think we have too much debt. How are we going to reduce that?
There's no easy way to say, like, we're going to reduce debt. And the audit, that's kind of a misconstrued. The auditors say that we have a high debt ratio portion of our budget, and that's what prohibits us from achieving the top tier for a bond rating. Most of our debt is debt exclusion projects.
Right,
And most of that is the school. I mean, you
right.
can't not build,
There's,
well, it's too late to not build a school.
No, but we can look at what's coming down the road at us, you know.
well, the way,
In the expenditures general fund, the excludable debt is projected to be reduced by $1,300,000, and the regular debt by $70,000. I think that's something to celebrate, and it takes into account that the town will have a major school renovation or building project within the next 5 to 8 years, which is going to put more debt on the shoulders of the taxpayers. So decreasing debt over the next 5 years is an important goal, not to be taken lightly. When we discussed debt last time, everyone said, you know, we don't have it written down here, but you know we're going to increase the debt. I would like to say we're not going to increase the debt.
Well, then you're going to prolong the deferred maintenance and action on any of these buildings in town we've been talking about for the past 20 years. I mean, you're not going to get a solution to any of those problems besides do the exact same thing we're doing now.
All right, so if it's not a realistic plan and we need to have debt, then the debt should be in the forecast.
But you don't know what it is. You don't know if it's 5 million, you don't know if it's 25 million, you don't know what it is. How do you plan for that?
Well, because there should be, now, as a person running your own family, you know there's a certain amount of debt you can undertake, and there's a certain amount of debt you can't undertake. We should know what the debt ceiling is, and we should be willing to say, all right, we can raise the debt limit by this much, but no more. You know, we have to be conscious of it.
It's different than a home because it's what the town is willing to approve for debt. It all comes down to town meeting. It's not that we can or can't, it's what the town's willing to vote for.
But I think the 5-year forecast is meaningless if you're not willing to say, all right, I think this is about the amount of debt we could handle. You know, you're not saying, let's go buy some stuff to stuff in the debt, but let's not exceed that.
But you can't plan for that.
You've got to.
financial forecasts do not forecast debt.
Well, then
The
there's
Division of Local Services, the Department of Revenue, they do not forecast debt. We can do analysis of what it is, what it looks like to take on new debt. That's what, you know, this tool is used for. And capacity, we can figure out capacity, if that's what you're looking at,
Right.
according to our policies that we have in place. That can be done, but a 5-year forecast does not forecast debt.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a weak link in a 5-year forecast. And then if it has to be done outside of the 5-year forecast, then let it be done outside of the 5-year forecast. I think we need to think about how much debt are we willing to undertake.
You don't know that.
You should know that.
You don't know what the people of Lunenburg want. You may sit at home and say, you and a lot of other people may say, I don't want any more debt. But there's people with kids in the school system who said, pile on another 70 million, who cares? It's what's important to you. You can't forecast that, you can't guess that,
You know, I think,
and you can't say what's appropriate when it's people at home who decide that.
I think it's foolish, and the 5-year forecast is a waste of time if you're not going to look at that.
I don't agree with that statement, though, Selectman Luck, because I think that there's a lot of value in being able to anticipate future positions. You're anticipating future projects. You know, when you're looking at the budget, you're anticipating future growth, and there's a lot of great information that comes out of it. When it comes to debt, I mean, I hear what Heather and Damon are saying, and I'm right with them. I think that we can't read tea leaves, that we have to know what is actually there. I mean, we want to tear down this building, like, right? I mean, how are we funding that? Debt, more than likely. I mean, we don't have $500,000 in the operational budget freely to spend. So, we're going to have to more than likely have this as part of a debt answer. We're talking about TC Pastios. How are we going to pay for that? With debt? That's the only way we can do it, that we don't have operational budget for it. If someone throws a expended cigarette at this building, I mean, we're going to have to think about replacing this thing too. I mean, all these big costs, though, are debt related. I think it's helpful to look at the future and see when it starts going down. And that way, for planning wise, all right, in 2023 is when we can take on some of these larger projects. That would probably be the year where nothing increases essentially, but we can take on what we've already had.
you certainly need to plan for all the operational things and live within your means at that end, but when it comes to excluded debt and projects that are approved specifically by town, that has nothing to do with what you or I think we can afford. That has everything to do with what the people of town are willing to bear.
I think as town leaders, we need to be ready to suggest, this is what we think the town can afford.
Yes, I agree with you. But is there any, I mean, as we talk about this, though, I mean, are there, it sounds as though we are all, well, not all members are here today, so I can't say we're all in agreement that we need to vacate this building. But I think that there's general consensus that it's problematic that we have our government working out of 3 buildings right now, and that we need to consolidate, right? And
And even if we didn't, the alternative, if the decision is we got to park ourselves here, then there's major things that need to be done to these buildings.
Exactly.
To get them to last. I mean, to say, there's no way out of the situation that we're in besides debt.
Yeah.
Yes, I know, but I'd like to identify an amount of debt we think we can bear. I think that's a very
For
useful...
policy, maybe, but what we can bear is what people are going to vote for.
And if the debt policy we have an existing debt policy, if that needs to be revised based on a decision that it needs to be below that cap, then that needs to be done, but it will review our existing debt schedule to see where we're at.
Yeah.
But one way planning has been done is, since I began, more and more has been put into reserves. And this is to plan for the future, for future capital needs, and where we can tap into those resources if need be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the underlying point, Selectman, that you're getting at, and is that, we gotta have a tight belt when it comes to spending money, and
Yes.
that we need to not freely do it. I think that most of all of the departments underneath the town manager's supervision are pretty frugal in their requests. But we did get a request from the schools to increase our budget by 40% in 5 years. So, I mean, that is, we can have whatever conversations we want to, but if we're looking at increasing a school budget by 40% to meet the strategic needs of the community, I mean, everyone, if you think you're paying $6,000 now, add 40% to that, I mean.
I'd like to discuss that school 5-year staffing plan. Those expenditures are neither conservative nor realistic, and they did not belong in a conservative 5-year forecasting plan presentation.
I think, I think that there's 2 ways to look at this, right? And how I look at it is, and I want to speak to how I think the other way is, but how I look at it is, if you have 100 people, I like even numbers. So we have 100 people, what are we doing for that 100? Right? I mean, so let's say we have 30 of them, for the most part, 28 of them are senior citizens. And we have a senior center for them, which has a budget of $159,000 a year. That's what we're doing for that 28 people. We have 30, roughly, people that have kids in the school. And we're doing a whole bunch for those people. And everyone else, we're really not doing much. So, I mean, that's kind of, we're doing the bare bones minimum with everyone else. We all agree that we have to provide a quality education to children. And that so, someone like me who doesn't have kids in the school system, I'm a net contributor. I don't have a problem being a net contributor. We need quite a few of us to be net contributors in order to make all this thing work. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the quality of the education in the schools, the parents are going to push for their kids having the best possible education that they can get. And that's 30, roughly, people in town, all of their friends. That's a lot of people who will show up and vote. Now, the other 70% of the town, for the most part, supports that to some degree. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, the question or the problems come in, which is how much of a degree does everyone else support that? I don't think that there's enough support to increase taxes roughly by another 40% in the next 5 years, or rather to increase the school budget. No one's going to go for that. Well, let me rephrase that. A couple of people will go for that. The majority of the town, I can safely assume, reading tea leaves, is not going to agree to their tax bill going up
Well, you
to
know-
pay for that. So the schools then have to reevaluate their
Right.
request.
They have to be more realistic and more practical.
Yeah, they do.
Well, it's not, that's one side of it, but they also have Michael kind of touched on it, the expectation from the people who have children in the school to educate them in the best way possible. So they can't come in here with a proposition that's not educating the children the best way possible. That gets vetted out, and they got to back it off and see, okay, best way possible with what money's available. But they got to find out, they got to tell you what the best is, and then you back them off, and they give you the best they can with what you gave them. But they have to come in, it'd be irresponsible for them to not tell you what they need to do, the best job they think they can do.
I disagree. I think it was a gigantic, as Mr. Rogers said, a wish list. If Lunenburg won the lottery, this is what we'd like. If Lunenburg won the lottery, I'd definitely consider all of those things. But half of the things she was discussing, they may not even need. It depends on how the school population evolves.
But they may need them, so you can't pretend it doesn't exist and then let it pop up out of nowhere later. You have to project, account for all the things that may come your way, and if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. But it's...
But then you hire all these people, and then you don't need them. Are they going to fire them? No, they're going to absorb them, and then they're going to hire more people.
She's not hiring all those people. She's planning for the event that she would need them.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, though, Selectman, because I think it's a little off-putting to see a budget that puts us in millions of dollars of deficits going for 5 years out.
It's just
and it is a bit hopeful and it is a bit wishful, but I think that her responsibility is to come up with a plan that is not accounting for income, that's accounting for what she believes is necessary to meet the unique needs of the kids. And it's our job to come back and say, sorry, we support the needs of the kids, but we can't afford that. So, and I mean, luckily town meeting, when you look around the room at town meeting, most people, I don't know what the average age is, but it certainly isn't in its 30s. And there's a lot of people there who've been contributing to the town for a long time. There's a lot of people that are in that 70 group that don't have kids in the school system that are there and continually voting for schools. But if you ask them for 40% more, they're going to say no. And so we know that.
So, that's why I just think it was just out of place. If you said, okay, give us, if we won the lottery, what would you like? This wasn't it. If we win the lottery, what would you like? It was like, I'm sure corporations do it all the time. If money was no object, what would you want? That's one list. Okay, that's fun. Now, what's the list that we actually seriously want to put forward? And that's the list that's missing.
Well, I think the difference, though, is, like, I've talked to the chief of police about the police, not so much the budget, but on the police officers. I have no doubt that Chief Marino would say, I need, 6, 7 more police officers. And that he would present us with a budget that says, this is what I need, right? But I think we understand that it's been kind of worked out, that it's going to be a gradual process.
That's right.
And that to get him to get there, to get our needs met, it's going to be over time. And I think the schools will be in the same boat. That they will, they're not getting 40% increase in their budget, so, they're going to have to, right?
Yeah. And this was, and I said this during that discussion, this is the first step in the process that has never been done. We've never.
I can see why.
We've never asked.
I didn't appreciate it.
Never been part of the 5-year forecast. No, I think it's very valuable.
I don't think it
It is
belongs in the
about-
5-year forecast.
It does when we get to the point where we're planning out. And,
when you're planning out a 40% increase, you're not planning, you're dreaming. That's what I'm talking about.
starting point, though.
It's not a starting point. It's a dream.
It's a starting point in the
It's a
discussion
fantasy.
towards,
It's a ridiculous starting point then. You didn't come in with a 40% budget increase. You didn't say, hey, listen, geez, if we won the lottery, this is what I'd like to have. You were more practical than that.
and I think the superintendent explained, this is what their needs are. She knows that we can't afford that. That's not,
Yeah.
it's not going to be achieved in that short a time.
I think the disconnect,
But it was-
Selectman-elect, is that she's looking at the needs of the students with all of the unfunded mandates that are coming down on them from the state and from the federal government. And, you know, it's how do we meet all the challenging needs of the student population? And I honestly, you know, I appreciate the fact that she did present us this, you know, kind of budget to give us some awareness of what she believes that she's looking for. We now know that the schools will be coming in here every year asking for as much as they can get. And we know that. And so, I mean, there's no, you know, there's nothing, no part of the presentation was, we can afford to be conservative. You know, that wasn't what they had to say. What they said was that we are not meeting the needs of our population and that we have a ways to go to get there. And that's their perspective. I heard them loud and clear. I also think that there are other areas that also have needs. I mean, you know, I wish we had unlimited funds, but we don't. So, I mean, we have to be realistic and say, what are we doing at least okay? And I think that's kind of the baseline. The
Right.
schools are at least okay.
Yes.
You know, every day that we have heat on in this building, we're throwing taxpayer dollars out of the roof because there are holes in it. I mean, there are, you know, on the siding of this building. You know, there are certain areas where we have to do better. And, I mean, that to me demands immediate attention. But that's more on the financial side. The schools will keep telling us that they need more, and I appreciate it and expect it. But it doesn't mean that we're going to find $10 million.
Right.
And that if we do find it, that we're not going to pull it to go towards fixing a building, hiring a facility manager, you know, I mean, some of the basics, you know, having a budget to replace, you know, failing HVAC equipment in different areas. So I think that there are high priorities, but it's good to hear theirs. Ours, you know, one thing I want to note, though, is that, you know, the town manager, to her credit, you know, she does a great job of managing the needs of all the other departments. And that we don't get those, you know, Heather steps in and says, you're not getting that, before it ever comes to us. And I think she figures out a plan that's strategic to get everyone's needs met in a unique way over a period of time. And that really is to Heather's credit. And now we know how we need to work better with the schools. Because, you know, we obviously can't touch what they are asking for.
Right.
So, can you afford to stay in this town if your taxes go up 40%?
No.
Most people can't either. So, you know, and it becomes like this awful cycle. Everyone who leaves, who's buying that house? A family with children. And now you're, what do you say?
I wouldn't say that.
Not everyone.
certainly
I certainly
you're-
have a house in Lunenburg. And
You're driving older people out when you raise the taxes too much, because they're on fixed incomes. They don't have 5% more every year. They've got to live on what they've got. You know, I've had people come up to me and say, you know, I'm trying to be on a tax plan to pay my tax bills month by month because I just can't afford to stay here. And that's now.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I worked at a grocery store when I was a kid, and you see the people that are seniors, and, I mean, I hate to say this, they buy cat food at the end of the month to eat, because they can't afford anything else. I mean, cat food, because it's cheap, but it's, I guess, pretty nutritious. You know, I mean, it's awful.
Yes.
It's awful. And, I mean, I get it, the situation that a lot of people are in, they're deciding between pills and, you know, heat, or, you know, it's terrible. And we have to do what we can do. But, you know, we have employees that expect to get raises. You know, we have health insurance costs that we have no control over. We have insurance costs and that are way higher than 2.5%.
Not that much higher this year.
This year.
Yeah,
But there have been years where it's much more.
Yes, there has been.
And there's energy rates that are going up, you know, all these things outside of our control.
To stay within Proposition 2.5, to not ask for an override, we have to stay within 2.5% plus the new growth. You know, we just really don't have a choice. We've got to figure that out. You know, people can't afford more than that.
I don't think people can afford that.
Right, I would agree.
But you still need to understand what the school's needs are, because when they come to town meeting and say, well, I need this, but we're going to have to cut this other core service to give it to you, people at town meeting will, you know, slash the police officer or the firefighter or some other critical thing if we didn't plan for it and account for it in our 5-year forecast. So we still need to understand what the needs are going to be and what they're going to look for.
Then I think they have to give us a more realistic needs picture.
I think they gave you one.
Yeah, I don't know, I spent a lot of years in education and not convinced. I do know that the last teacher's contract added $1 million+ to the school budget over the 3 years of the contract.
You have a lot of
8
employees.
teachers got an 8% raise.
I know.
They're,
But I mean,
they are not being good stewards of our money.
But I mean, but I want to be realistic, though. We are elected officials, right? And we have all these vacancies in town, but I assure you that if the student population felt as if we were a threat to the schools, I think that they will very aggressively run for office and make sure that this board is more supportive to schools. So I think no matter what, we cannot take a stance of, I think it would be great if we could hold the school's budget for a year so we can get more stuff in town done. That would be great, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, so we have to work with reality here. And most of the town is, for the person, I can sit here and advocate, which, our role isn't advocacy so much, but I can sit here and advocate for why we need to make the Ritter building ADA compliant. But if you have a kid in the school system that is in a wheelchair, you don't need anyone to advocate. They're going to do it for themselves. I'm saying that to say they are. But I'm saying when you have a problem, using that as an example to say that an adult may have a need, but they're not going to be out there vocalizing it as much as the needs of kids. That they have everyone loves their children. Everyone wants their kids to be the best they can be, and everyone knows that that's going to take more money than they can contribute to the tax base. I think everyone knows that.
It's not just about money. It shouldn't be. It should be about the quality of teaching. It's about a lot of things. You can't just throw money at it.
Well, how are you going to get quality teachers and specialists in the fields that the children need addressed if you don't pay them?
Yeah.
They are paid. They are well paid.
But I hear what you're saying, but I see the problem with, there are a lot of behavioral incidents and kids, they want to keep the children in the school district. It costs a lot less, but then you need to have professionals to address the behavioral issues. Those specialists are not cheap. They're money.
Really, we're getting down into, how they're running the schools.
Which is, not our
place.
job, yeah.
It's not our place.
But we know that their budget is going to stay high, and they're going to keep asking us for more money. And without focusing, we can say it's not about the money, because I don't think from their perspective it is about money. I think it's about what can we do to provide the best service. And I think we have to be able to hear that, though, and hear what they're saying to us to work with it.
I agree with that. I think that's the motivation behind any of this, is they're trying to provide the best education they can for the children.
Yeah.
People want to back it off, then it's up to us and people in town to back it off, but that's also their job to advocate for the kids.
And I think, if they get to the point that they start talking about cutting Spanish, or not Spanish, but if they start cutting Latin, I'm going to be up in arms about that. And I don't have a strong opinion about much of what goes on in the schools, but I do have a strong opinion about that, because I think, anyway. So people have their kind of pet things, and once you want to remove something, people are going to say no.
Yeah, it didn't sound like they were removing a lot. It looked like they were trying to add a lot.
Yeah. So aside from all the stuff that has nothing to do with the Board of Selectmen, within that forecast, though, do you see a way that we can work with the schools, Heather, to kind of get to a budget that makes sense?
I believe so, yes. I've had a good working relationship with the superintendent, and as everyone knows, the budget develops over time as new figures become known. The approach has always been to be a balanced approach, try to address all the department's needs as best as possible. And when we get to that point where, this is as much as the budget can support, we've been in agreement at that point. And that's what's been proposed in the end.
I'm going to ask you a very real question, Heather, just so that we have some situation awareness. Because we talk about people doing more with less. How many hours a week do you work? Realistically, I know the answer to this, but how many hours a week do you work?
I couldn't even guess. I mean, I work sometimes when I get home from work at night. I work on weekends, so, yeah. Ask my husband that question.
You don't want to keep.
And he would say too much. You make minimum wage for how much, yeah.
Would you say
How
that
many
you
hours?
work consistently at least 65 hours a week?
Probably. And it's definitely more this time of year.
How many other salaried employees are doing that in town?
I'm not sure, I know we have a lot of dedicated staff, so I'm sure there's people that go above and beyond their 40-hour week outside of their work hours. I can guarantee that.
Yeah. I think that we generally have to always find ways to do more with less. I do. But I think that there are certain areas where, like, I think about even the town manager. Now, the town manager's, you're in a different boat. I mean, we all think that you're very well compensated. I think you may not think that because of the amount of hours you're working. But I think that we all think that. But then when it really gets down to the job, though, like, we expect you to do far more than can actually be done in 40 hours a week, far more. And I'm aware of that. I think that, seeing all the meetings you go to, and I'm using it as an example, we have the chief of police who I know is in the same boat, where he's putting an endless amount of hours
Yes.
To the town. And I think that there's a lot of areas where I look around and see our employees and a lot of public servants who are humble and who are doing a lot, and I feel as if our responsibility is to be a better employer to them. And and that's why I'm going to focus so heavily on buildings and the fact that we need to have better buildings, because buildings, need to work for the people that are in them as well as the people who need to come to them. I'm saying that to say that we have a lot of people in town who already are contributing a lot. And I'm very hesitant to add any more staff in general, but I recognize that we have to in certain areas, right? I mean, if we lose certain critical personnel, I was thinking the other day, what happens if we were to lose Jack Rodigans? If something were to happen in his life and he were to say tomorrow, I need to take the next 5 months off, how would we be able to respond to that?
Could hire a town engineer.
But
Many DPW directors are town engineers.
that would be a precarious position the town would be in, with all the department handles, yes.
Yeah,
Wasn't that one of the odd things? I mean, you can't just go replace a department head like that, but cross-training probably, stand here just right up to.
Knowing what each role, their responsibilities are on a daily basis, and,
Right.
yeah, which would take,
Yeah,
Yeah.
any department
Yeah.
head is, in any scope is
Right.
tough to replace just like that,
but
but.
that's a good segue. I brought this for later. I don't know if anyone saw this article in the Telegram.
No, I
No?
haven't read it today.
It's all about the less and less people going into municipal government, and that these positions are becoming harder and harder to fill, because there's the baby boomers that are out, there's a huge pool of people that will be retiring, and there's not enough qualified people out there to fill those positions. So, if anyone wants to read it, it's a good article.
Thank you.
But
Thank you for mentioning that, because I think we are in a precarious position where, when we get beyond the theory of it all costs too much and really get into the nitty-gritty of how do we save money, I mean, it's challenging.
It is challenging.
It's challenging.
But we
And
have to meet the challenge.
And it's frustrating when you have these positions, building commissioner position that's open for, a year? We have DPW positions that we can't fill.
that's one of the positions that they talk about in that article. Building
Yeah.
commissioner, town managers, and assessors, and finance. Those are all positions that are very hard to fill.
You always say, try to do more with less, but at some point, you can't keep asking people to do more, you have to actually cut something, cut a service.
Yeah.
Someone wants to propose a cut somewhere, all ears, but I don't know who you're gonna put on the chopping block to reduce operating costs.
And as a resident of this town, aside from sitting on this board, I want to have a town hall. As an example, that this is something that since the creation of towns, that we've always had a point of assembly, a place that's like the whole town character, is that you have one place of assembly. And, we've been so lean for so long that we are not even taking care of some of the basics, of having your, government in one spot. I mean, I have friends who work for pharmaceuticals, and there's a whole bunch of different divisions, a whole bunch of buildings, but to think that, roughly, I don't know how many people work between these three buildings, but I'm assuming it's probably 60 people or so, but, 60 people in three buildings, like all that gas that we're wasting to heat these buildings up.
It's true, we do have to figure that out, but is that part of the discussion on fiscal year 2021 budget?
I think I'm
Annual
mentioning...
town meeting warrant articles?
I'm mentioning it to say that, one goal that I have, that we know that we're living in a warming climate, like in a warming planet. Maybe some people think that that's up for debate, but I don't. I think this planet's getting warmer, and what are we doing right now to help address that? And, having our current facility set up is not contributing. We're adding to the problem. And so I think that, as we talk about money and we talk about debt, that we have to have a clear vision of where we are going.
Yes.
And I think that that's our duty.
Yes.
On this board, is to come up with that vision.
I agree. But, we have 5 members, and there may be 4 or 5 visions, so it's, and then you get to town meeting, and you've got all of, but it's something we really need to work at. We really need to work. I totally agree with you. We should be greener. We should try to figure out a way to make ourselves more net neutral. But I'm not sure that this is the time for that discussion.
Well, you're talking about debt, so I think that's what spurred it.
Yeah. I know we're kind of like, I'm sure at home, people are like, you guys are all over the place tonight.
Yes, we are.
And I think that we are, but I think it's helpful to have, this is when we can't talk about this privately outside of these meetings.
I know.
So I think, we have to have this time to, and it's probably more helpful with only 3 of us here tonight.
It is.
All right.
Anything you want to add, anything, Damon?
No, not to the 5-year plan.
Or the forecast?
No.
Okay, well, all right,
All right.
we'll get the budget next Tuesday. Now we want to vote to support local technical assistance application to MRPC so that's the Metropolitan Regional Planning Commission for ADA, which is, what is ADA?
American with Disabilities Act.
American with Disabilities Act, Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan.
And that's what was provided to us previously. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so this is a continuation, so we did receive a DLTA, they call it, to do the self-evaluation piece, and MRPC is wrapping that up, and this is to complete that plan.
So, yeah,
Do we need to
motion
vote?
to support the local district technical assistance application to MRPC for the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan.
Good job.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'm going to sign it then. Okay. Just me?
Yep, just you.
Okay,
Yep.
great. All right, we have to sign a corrected Class 2 auto dealer license for Lunenburg Auto Center. Are we all set with
All
that?
set.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
signed.
And now, we have a notice from PMK Motor Sales, 36 Summer Street, closing, and Class 2 auto dealer license discontinuance.
Is there a transfer, or are they just closed?
I think they're just closing,
Just
right?
closing.
They're just closing.
And,
So do we need to do anything with that?
no, it's just an announcement, but
Okay.
it's the same address as this new business.
Yeah.
So they're taking out.
Oh,
it's not-
okay.
it's different than a liquor license, that it's not a transfer, they apply for
Got it.
their own license.
Great. Okay, minutes, warrants, action items. We've got some minutes. The minutes are from October 22nd, and October 15th. Are there any action items?
No. Oh, yes, I have a question. Where are we at with DPW tanks?
We're working with and finalizing contract documents with the engineer.
Okay.
All set.
And we're still on track to have these installed before town meeting?
To expend the 160,000 grant by the deadline, yeah.
Okay. So, no, they won't be installed?
I hope to be. I've talked to different people saying the install is only a couple weeks, so.
Great. Any other action items? Well, I have one. I recall that when the Board of Selectmen met with the school committee, both groups agreed that you, the town manager, would participate in the teachers' contract negotiations. The superintendent recently made us aware that the negotiations are now underway, as this is the contract with the most impact on the school and town's budgets. I would appreciate scheduling an executive session for the Board of Selectmen to be updated on the progress of this negotiation as soon as possible. Because the last contract negotiation resulted in a $1,02,735 increase to the budget over the 3 years of the contract. I sincerely hope the town can achieve better results this time.
Just to respond to that, that is not my recollection of that meeting with the school committee. It was that, not that I would be directly involved in the negotiating, but that the school would work with the town manager on knowing what a reasonable cost was that the town could afford.
I'd like to look at those minutes because I was very specific.
Which should also be on YouTube.
That seems, I mean, respectfully, Selectman, look, that, we have a school committee for that very reason.
Yeah, and they did a poor job last time.
But that's not, we can vote for different members then, but we can't do their job.
No, we
That's the
can't do their
separation.
job, but it's 60 to 65% of the town's budget. The teacher's contract is huge. It has a huge impact on the budget.
It does.
It added $1 million over 3 years, and I knew that it would happen, that they would, as soon as the contract would pass, go, geez, we need more money. Really? I mean, it's...
Well, it's not our part of the budget to deal with.
Yeah, we can't. I agree with you in the theory of, I wish that I could do something in my role related to it, but I know that we cannot.
I would like an executive session to find out what's happening with the contract, if at all possible.
As far as the executive session goes, and their ground rules that when they enter negotiations, those discussions are confidential to when they have those negotiating sessions. And they're reporting to the school committee, not to any other board.
Nor should
And so
they.
you can't even be aware of what they're discussing? You can't be involved in that at all?
Not unless they agreed that I'd be part of the team that sits at the table.
Boy, I really remember that. I'm going to have to go back and look at that, because I really remember being happy with our decision. And I wouldn't have been if I interpreted it this way.
We could work with the chair when he returns to see if we can invite the school committee back in, just to have a informal discussion about...
It would have to be an executive session, wouldn't it?
No, not about the content of their negotiations, more about your
What
concerns.
your expectation is, I suppose, if you want to voice that to them. But again,
Right.
you can voice your opinion all you want, but it's their decision.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's what it is. I mean, the school committee gets to decide school budget and how they expend the money. I mean, they don't have to give it to the teachers in the form of a raise. And I have plenty of friends who haven't gotten raises in a very long time who are teachers, but that doesn't happen here in Lunenburg.
Right.
And only the school committee can change that. So,
Well, I would like to at least set up, if it's just an informal discussion, I would like to set something up, because it wasn't pretty last time. And I would hope for a better outcome this time. Committee reports. Oh, well, we're done with the warrants? Committee reports. I have a report somewhere. Okay. I attended the MPO Montezut Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday, January 22nd. The Montezut Transportation Improvement Plan, called the TIP, development schedule was announced. The anticipated endorsement date is May 2020. The group is looking for new projects. There are currently 16 neighboring communities with projects on this list. Some of them, like Air, have 4 projects listed. I would ask the town manager to work with the DPW director to identify another project to propose to get back on the TIP. On Thursday, January 23rd, I attended the Stormwater Task Force meeting. We received earlier that day an update on the MS4 permit Year 2 work status, but had no time to review prior to the meeting. We'll review all the information sent to us that day at the next Stormwater Task Force meeting on April 9th. On February 26th, I'll attend the steering committee meeting of the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition right here in Lunenburg at our beautiful library. On Saturday, February 29th, I'll attend the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners meeting at Holy Cross to assist the stormwater education efforts of the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition by manning their booth. That's it for me.
Just Heather kind of touched on it, but we had the building committee meeting last Wednesday to hear from the architects who responded to the RFQ. And tomorrow night at the Ritter Building, we'll be ranking and make a recommendation to the town manager. If people are interested, I hear people are watching, but we went out of the way to make sure the room was set up, and we scheduled time for community input to ask questions of the architects, and we had an empty room.
Yep, we know how that happens.
Yep.
Okay, old business, the Economic Development Committee, DOS representative.
Was this related to what Sue Doherty sent us?
No, that Economic Development Committee, it's right
Planning board
right
generated
here.
this, is that
Oh, yeah.
The
that's
planning
right.
board did.
Yes, I did see that.
Oh, it's in the thing. I don't
They're
think it's not in
requesting,
this month's.
one
It's not in
member.
this week's, I don't think, but maybe the last one?
Yes.
Is?
I can't commit to any additional
Oh, yeah, there it
duties.
I expressed this at our last meeting. I think this is the biggest waste of time and resources that we could put together.
I'm totally
The
in agreement.
biggest.
One of the biggest, yes. The culture of the way the people are treated when they come in applying for things, not by the staff or the departments, but by the boards, it's hard to watch a meeting where you don't see people come in, applicants come in, and they're not treated like they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, like they're the bad guy, like they're doing something wrong. If people say, oh, you can't just rubber stamp it, but if they come in, they did all the things they're supposed to do, met the bylaws, filed the paperwork, and everything else, what is the point of putting them through the runaround and the hassle and the abuse that they get? Putting them together committee is nice, but it's not going to change a single thing.
Yeah, I guess I don't get what you're complaining about in connection with the Economic Development Committee, but I agree with you that we can't get volunteers for the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, the Sewer Commission, basic committees the town needs to run. An Economic Development Committee is so far down the line of what we need. I don't understand. I just really think it's a waste of time.
Yeah, Damon, I agree with you with your point, and and I may have been guilty in the past of contributing to that, although when it came to the solar thing, I probably wouldn't have said I contributed to that, since I didn't. I absolutely thought that was a wool over our eyes situation, but I think that, the situation even with our earth removal permit that came before us, I think that was an example of what you're talking about, where we have information, it's our responsibility as clear cut and clean. And, for an applicant, I understood, because I was wavering when asking them to come back in the following week. I ultimately didn't decide to go with the minority, because I think 3 weeks is too much. But, having an engineering firm here costs a lot of money for these applicants to come here with engineers to present on their behalf, even the time out of their day. These are people.
I guess I don't mean to interrupt, but what does that have to do with the economic
I
development?
think that what we're saying is that that's how we treat the people coming to develop has the most impact on development. That if they feel like they're going to come here and be disrespected, and that they're not going to be treated as if they're making a positive contribution to the community, then they're not going to come here and do it.
You can have all these people sitting in a room talking about how to, make it a better business environment, when all you have to do is turn around, look in the mirror, look at yourself, and how you treat people. That's the biggest hindrance to economic development in town. Not whether the Agricultural Commission or Open Space thought something would be nice.
Well, another thing is, I'm not sure how Lunenburg residents feel about economic development. I think many of us love the unique situation Lunenburg's in. We're a rural community, but 2 miles down the road, we have the advantage of Fitchburg, Leominster, Shirley, Air, and all they provide, all the services they provide, without having to be responsible for the police and the fire and every other thing that having those services in town require. When I talk to people don't want more economic development. So
but they also don't want to pay more money in taxes, and they want better schools, and
but the thing is,
we all want a lot of things.
You're not going to economic development. You're not going to get enough economic development to lower anybody's taxes, unless you change the community vastly.
It will not lower your taxes, but it will help prevent raising your taxes. This is the new growth that you want to see, because it's not putting kids in the school system. It's not feeding that biggest piece of the budget that you keep talking about. We should want some economic development, but having these people sit in a room and talk about it, to me, isn't going to accomplish that.
I agree.
But if somebody else wants to volunteer for the board, not shelf but you're not going to give them to do it.
No, I'm not interested either.
I mean, Mass Ave is zoned commercial pretty much from the Fitchburg line till the fire department, and then again after, Northfield Road over. And I mean, when people come before us to do development on land that's zoned commercial, I think that we need to not give them the third degree.
I totally, obviously, I disagree with you on how we handled the earth permit application. And the planning board disagrees with you because they're having them come back for several meetings,
And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't think, I feel like if we're going to do earth permits, we need someone here with us who can explain it to us, and so that we understand. I don't know how steep that slope was. I don't know what the impact is on the community if they remove all of that fill in 1 year, as they said in the Conservation Commission meeting that they're trying to do. I mean, I just don't know the answers to those questions, and I wouldn't. And I am not ashamed that I didn't vote to approve it, because I didn't have the answers I needed.
But all the information is in the filing and the reports and everything that they've put in front of you.
But I can't visualize the slope, for
There's
example.
a cross-section in the plans that shows you exactly what the slope is, to scale.
I hear what the planning board's saying. I think that I'm not interested. I'm not saying it as a vocalization about their request and having a strong opinion about it. I can't commit to another meeting.
Well, I mean, clearly, because, three of you voted to approve it, so you've made your, and I voted not to approve it, so we're entitled to our opinions. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But we all agree on the Economic Development Committee,
Yeah.
and none of us are interested.
So should we bring this up again next week when we have other members here?
To see if the other two members are interested?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure, why not? All right.
planning board share responsibility for economic development in town. But I mean, you know, we have the zoning. I don't think there's much more we really can do besides what Damon's suggesting, which is not make this such a ridiculous process that, you know, you have to have have to have some deep pockets if you're willing to go through all these meetings that we're putting people through.
And it's not...
Well, you know what, the boards have asked to have a land board meeting for at least 2 years.
What do you mean by a
They
land
would-
board meeting?
You know, the conservation, planning, is there another land board?
We've done it before. It doesn't...
They have asked to have that meeting. They would like to work together so that if someone
But you
has...
shouldn't be working together. That's the biggest, one of the biggest complaints they have. We wanted to hold up the meeting, the approval, because the other board hadn't approved it yet. But they're gonna go back and say, oh, the selectmen haven't approved it yet. You have your thing to review. Planning board is reviewing stormwater runoff for that project. We shouldn't even been thinking about stormwater for the project. We should be looking at all the things that we're supposed to do. And you say, oh, I'm gonna make my decision contingent upon them. Oh, I'm going to make my decision contingent about them. That's the most, it gets convoluted, it's collusion, quite honestly, at some points. Like, we'll find something wrong with it if they keep finding things wrong with it, just to find a way to disapprove it.
Oh, I was thinking, in some communities, a couple of boards meet together so that the applicant has less meetings to go.
You have a technical review when they bring in the process, but every board should be reviewing their thing. Talking once in a while is not a bad thing, but when it comes to applications, everyone has their thing. You should not be working together to deny a project, which is what happens.
You know, that really wasn't where I was going at all. I was trying to minimize the number of meetings an applicant would have to
It just
attend.
makes more, no, you can't have
Okay.
a conservation and planning and anybody else meeting at the same time to review one application. It's not going to make it any quicker.
It's going to become like the Unitil meeting. It's going to be like a gauntlet.
Yeah, you'll have planning board members sitting there in a room listening to runoff questions that they don't have any reason to be affecting their vote. It convolutes the process, and it adds more meetings, and more people weighing in on things that they're not responsible for.
So what's your solution?
Stick to what your role is. Be kind and thoughtful to the people who show up and want to do business in our town, and treat them with respect, and not like there's the bad guy coming in to do something evil. They're not trying to hurt you, most of the time. They're not trying to hurt you, but that's the way they're treated.
Oh, I think I would have to disagree.
I think every civil engineer in the state of Massachusetts would disagree with that.
I think that engineers have a tough time in this town. I agree. I think this is a hard town to develop in. It's hard to get anything approved.
For all the things that we sit down and make people do, the end result hardly ever changes more than an inch. You've just made them go through a process to appease the board.
I don't know, I
I'm
think...
not on the planning board anymore, so it doesn't matter, but as far as economic development, nothing's gonna happen until you look at yourself.
But it feels like, with a speech like that, I can see why we have trouble getting volunteers.
I lived through it for 4 years, and I watch it all the time. I have projects, not just at Lunenburg, I see how easy it is in a lot of places to do business compared to what people have to go through here. It's not scaring away volunteers, it's telling you to be nice to people, be respectful. That's not scaring away volunteers.
And I think it also, to one comment that I will contribute here, on top of all the ones I've already contributed, is that we have to do a better job of doing our homework.
Yes.
That when we get projects in front of us, this doesn't come to us at the last minute, the day of, that we get the
Sometimes
stuff.
it does.
But what I've seen on the planning board, what I've seen here, there's plenty of advance notice. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me when we have to delay things so that way we can do the homework that could have been done prior to the meeting in the first place.
Yep.
And that
I
was
agree.
my perception ultimately why I did not join the vote with you guys, because I felt as if this was a case of homework not being done.
Yeah, I guess, and, to Katie's point, we aren't civil engineers, so a lot of the information and the documentation didn't make much sense to us. So we're not really, we're not really equipped to make those decisions without having the guidance of someone to explain it to us,
You have an architect, and then you have a contractor, but you guys didn't want to hear what we had to say.
And the building inspector is an earth removal specialist, he's not a civil engineer. Land use director isn't a civil engineer, he's a zoning professional. He has some experience from, being around it, but he doesn't know this many yards versus that many yards, or what expertise is he going to provide except for, the applicant's engineer is not lying.
And he did provide a memo for that discussion as well.
It's not our job, it's not any reviewing body's job to design the project for them. They made an application, they think it applies with the bylaws. You say, does it apply with the bylaws? Does it have the negative effects on the abutters? Can we address the abutters' concerns during when we make the decision and conditions? What else can you do? You can't, whether you understand the slope or not, you can't design his project for him. It's not your job to design this project. He designed this project. You tell him if it meets the town bylaws, if it addresses the needs of the abutters.
I'm not sure it addressed the needs of the abutters.
And we have rules of denial that we weren't even focusing on, it was like, and I think that's something that we need to really think about is, a lot of times there's reasons listed of why we can legally deny an application, and if we're not looking at those reasons, and if that's not the discussion, then why are we?
And we just get sued, and he gets to do his project anyways, and we spent time in litigation, he spent time in litigation, lost opportunity, and he says, why am I doing business in Lunenburg? And he tells all his friends about his terrible time he had in Lunenburg.
And he's going to tell at least 7 people, because that's the number. Something bad happens to you, you tell 7 people. Something good, you tell 2.
It's no lie. I've had conversations with some engineers say, I'm not doing business in Lunenburg anymore. I'm taking a break from doing business in Lunenburg because it's ridiculous. I'm not making this up. It's not a personal feeling.
Sounds it.
It's personal to me because it's my industry and I know how much better it can be. But I'm not pulling this out of thin air.
I hear you. We're tacking a lot of stuff on where, you mentioned tonight that people don't like economic development. That's, I think, partially true, because the zoning map says that they do. But I think that people's sentiment is, I like the town being rural, and, that's what people's sentiment is. And then they get their tax bills, and they say, oh my gosh, why is this going up so much?
You have to put so much economic development in to affect the tax rate at all. I think that's not a good argument.
That having commercial and industrial properties help out?
Right.
Well, okay.
That having an extra $50,000 worth of new growth helps you hire another person on staff or not raise the tax rate. It's not going to reverse it. I'm not telling you it's going to reverse it, but it will stop it'll stop the issues of sitting here thinking about an override.
Yeah, I just disagree.
Okay.
All right, are we ready?
I thought we'd be out of here at...
I know, but,
I'm vocal tonight.
yeah.
I know,
really
Dave.
are. Good for you. Upcoming meeting schedule, February 11th and 18th, 2020. On the 11th, the town manager will give us her preliminary budget presentation, and on February 13th, she will give a preliminary budget presentation to finance, and at both meetings, there will be an opportunity for public questions.
Now, one question is, we had talked in December about adding another meeting at the end of January and at the end of February. Are we planning on doing that at the end of this month?
It doesn't look like on the schedule.
Yeah, I haven't
Should we
talked
ask,
to
talk to the chair and
Chair.
find out if he thinks that would be a good idea? Can you do that?
I can.
Thank you. Any public comment from the board?
I just have a comment on the schedule. I will not be here on March the 10th.
Okay, March 10th. Any comment from you?
I mean,
Any comment from the public? No? I'll accept a meeting to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.